I used to think there would be a moment. A clear one. Obvious. Like a switch flipping in my head where everything suddenly made sense. Where I'd finally say it out loud to myself, to someone else, to the world, and feel relieved. That never happened. Instead, it was quieter than that. Slower. Like something unfolding inside me that I kept trying to fold back up. My name is Lucas. I'm 24, and for most of my life I've been really good at pretending I understand myself. From the outside, nothing about me looked complicated. I had a stable job, a small but solid group of friends, and the kind of routine that made people say things like, "You've got your life together." What they didn't see was how often I avoided my own reflection. Not literally. I saw myself everyday mirror, phone camera, passing windows. But I never really looked. Not in the way that asks questions you don't want to answer. Because somewhere, deep down, I already knew. I just didn't want to say it. It started, or at least became impossible to ignore, the day I met Grant. He wasn't supposed to matter. He was just a new guy at work. Same department, different team. Someone I noticed in that casual, passing way like you notice anyone who walks into a room with quiet confidence and doesn't seem to need attention to hold it. Tall, calm, the kind of person who listens more than he talks. But when he does speak, people actually stop and hear him. I remember the first time he said my name. Lucas, right? It shouldn't have meant anything. But it did. Yeah, I replied, probably too quickly. And you're Grant. He smiled, just a little. Good. I was hoping I didn't imagine that introduction meeting. I laughed. Normal. Easy. Safe. That's the word I kept using back then. Safe. Because as long as everything stayed in that category-friendly conversations, shared coffee breaks, occasional jokes, I didn't have to question anything. I didn't have to look too closely at why I noticed when he entered a room. Or why I remembered small details about him without trying. Or why, when he stood a little too close one afternoon while we were both looking at the same screen, my entire body went tense like I'd just stepped into something I didn't understand. I told myself it was nothing. Admiration. Curiosity. Maybe even just boredom mixed with routine. Anything but the truth. Because the truth came with consequences. And I wasn't ready for those. Grant and I became friends in the most natural way possible. No big moment. No sudden shift. Just a series of small things that kept adding up. We started having lunch together sometimes. Not planned, just coincidental at first. Same time, same place, same quiet understanding that neither of us minded the company. You always sit here, he asked one day, setting his tray across from mine. Only when I don't feel like pretending to be social, I said. He nodded. Good. Same. That was it. That was all it took. After that, it stopped being coincidence. We'd text occasionally. Work stuff at first, then random things, memes, complaints about meetings, observations that didn't need a response but got one anyway. It felt easy, and that scared me more than anything. Because easy meant I wasn't in control. The first real crack showed up on a Friday evening. We'd both stayed late at work, the office nearly empty, that quiet hum of computers and distant traffic filling the space. Do you ever feel like you're just going through motions? Grant asked suddenly, leaning back in his chair. The question caught me off guard. All the time, I admitted before I could stop myself. He turned slightly toward me, studying my face like he was trying to see something beneath the surface. Yeah, he said. Me too. There was something in the way he said it. Not casual, not passing, honest. And for a second, I felt exposed. Like he could see the parts of me I'd spent years carefully ignoring. I looked away first. Probably just burnout, I said quickly. Work, routine, all that. Maybe, he replied. But he didn't sound convinced. That night, I went home and sat in the dark longer than I should have. No TV, no music, just silence. And my thoughts, which was a mistake. Because once you let yourself really think, it's hard to stop. I replayed everything. The way I felt around him. The way my chest tightened when he looked at me a certain way. The way I noticed him. More than I should. More than I wanted to admit. I ran through every possible explanation. Maybe I just wanted to be like him. Maybe I admired his confidence. Maybe I was just lonely. But every version of the truth I tried to construct felt like a workaround. Not the answer. The real answer sat there, heavy and undeniable. I just refused to say it. Because saying it meant everything would change. And I wasn't ready to lose the version of myself I'd built. Even if it wasn't real. The next week, something shifted. Not outwardly. No one else would have noticed. But inside me, it felt louder. Every interaction with Grant carried weight now. Every glance lasted a second too long. Every conversation felt like it meant more than it should. And the worst part? He didn't seem confused at all. He was just himself. Calm, grounded, uncomplicated. While I felt like I was slowly unraveling. One afternoon, we were walking out of the building together when he asked, "You ever think about what you actually want?" I froze. About what? I asked, buying time. Life. People. Whatever matters to you, he said. I forced a shrug. I think I know. He glanced at me, not pushing, just waiting. And that silence was unbearable. Because for the first time, I realized something I couldn't ignore anymore. I didn't know. Not really. Not when it came to this. Not when it came to him. That night, I stood in front of the mirror longer than usual. Not just looking. Actually looking. At my face. My expression. The hesitation in my own eyes. And for a brief second, just when I almost said it. Out loud. I think I might be. I stopped. The words felt too heavy. Too final. Like once they existed, I wouldn't be able to take them back. So I didn't finish the sentence. I just stood there, breathing, staring at someone I wasn't sure I recognized anymore. And that's when I understood something I hadn't been ready to face before. This wasn't about Grant. Not really. He was just the catalyst. The mirror I couldn't avoid. The reason everything I'd buried started coming back to the surface. The real fight wasn't with him. It was with myself. And I was losing. I wish I could say I handled it well. That I faced it head on, accepted it, moved forward like a normal person. I didn't. I started pulling back. Subtly at first. Answering messages slower. Skipping lunches. Finding excuses to stay busy. Not because I didn't want to see him, but because I wanted to stop feeling like this. Because every moment around him made it harder to pretend. And pretending was the only thing I knew how to do. One day he caught me. Did I do something? Grant asked, standing in front of my desk. My chest tightened immediately. What do you mean? You've been avoiding me, he said simply. No accusation. No anger. Just truth. I've just been busy, I replied. He held my gaze for a second longer than I was comfortable with. Right, he said. He didn't argue. He didn't push. But the way he looked at me, like he knew I wasn't being honest, stayed with me long after he walked away. That night, I couldn't sleep. Because for the first time, I wasn't just running from the truth. I was running from him. And something about that felt worse. Because deep down I knew, if I kept doing this, I wasn't just going to lose him. I was going to lose whatever chance I had at understanding myself. And that terrified me more than anything else. I didn't realize it yet. But this was the beginning. Not of a relationship. Not of some perfect story. But of something much harder. Admitting the truth to myself. And everything that comes after. Avoiding him didn't fix anything. If anything, it made everything worse. Because now, instead of confusion mixed with something I didn't want to name, there was guilt layered on top of it. And guilt is harder to ignore. The next few days felt off. Not dramatic. Not obvious to anyone else. But between us, there was a shift. Grant stopped texting first. Stopped showing up at my desk. Stopped asking if I was joining him for lunch. He didn't act cold, just distant in a way that felt intentional. Respectful. And somehow, that hurt more than if he'd called me out. Because it meant he'd noticed. And instead of forcing me to explain, he gave me space. Which I didn't deserve. By Thursday, I couldn't take it anymore. I saw him in the break room, leaning against the counter, scrolling through his phone. Same as always. Same calm presence. Except now, there was a distance between us that hadn't been there before. I hesitated in the doorway. I could leave, pretend I needed something else. But I didn't. Hey, I said. He looked up, a little surprised, but not unfriendly. Hey. There was a pause. Too long. I hated that. Can we talk? I asked. He studied me for a second, like he was deciding something. Then he nodded. Yeah, sure. We ended up outside, near the back of the building where almost no one went. Cold air. Quiet. No distractions. Which meant no escape. I shoved my hands into my pockets, trying to ground myself. I'm sorry, I said. He tilted his head slightly. For what? For being weird, I replied. For pulling away. He watched me carefully, not judging, just listening. Did I do something? He asked again, more gently this time. No, I said quickly. No, it's not you. The cliché hung there between us. He almost smiled. It usually isn't. I exhaled, frustrated with myself. I know how that sounds. Then say what you mean, he said. Not harsh, just direct. And that was the problem. because I didn't know how to say what I meant without saying everything. I've just had a lot on my mind, I said finally. He nodded slowly. Okay. But he didn't move on, didn't fill the silence. Just stood there, giving me space to continue. And that silence felt like pressure, like I had two options. Tell the truth, or keep lying. I don't really understand myself right now, I admitted. The words felt strange coming out, unfamiliar, but also relieving. A little. Grant's expression softened slightly. That's not a crime, he said. I know, I replied. But it feels like one. Why? I let out a quiet breath. Because it's easier to just be who I've always been. And who's that? He asked. I opened my mouth, closed it again, because I didn't have a clean answer. And that scared me. He didn't push, didn't try to fill in the blanks. Just nodded once, like he understood more than I'd actually said. Whatever it is, he said, you don't have to figure it out alone. That hit harder than it should have, because I had been alone in it. For a long time, even before him. I think I'm making things complicated, I said, forcing a small laugh. Maybe, he replied. Or maybe you're just finally paying attention. I looked at him then, really looked. And for a second, I had this overwhelming feeling that he wasn't guessing. That he knew, or at least suspected. And that terrified me. I should get back, I said quickly. Coward. Yeah, he nodded. Me too. We walked back in together. Not awkward. Not fixed either. Just something in between. That night, I didn't avoid the mirror. But I didn't face it fully either. I sat on my bed, phone in my hand, scrolling through nothing. Thinking about everything. His words kept replaying in my head. Maybe you're just finally paying attention. I hated how accurate that felt. Because I had spent years not paying attention. Ignoring small things. Dismissing certain thoughts. Redirecting feelings before they had a chance to become real. And now? Now everything was catching up to me at once. I tried to distract myself. Went out with friends the next evening. Loud bar. Music. Conversations that didn't require depth. The kind of environment where you're not supposed to think too much. It worked. For a while. Until it didn't. Lucas, you're zoning out again, my friend Alex said, nudging me. Sorry, I muttered. Just tired. You've been tired for like a week, he said. What's going on? Nothing. I replied automatically. He gave me a look. You know you're bad at lying, right? I forced a smile. Good thing I'm not lying then. He didn't look convinced. But he let it go. Everyone always does. As long as you don't give them a reason to dig deeper. At some point, I stepped outside for air. The noise faded behind me, replaced by cool night air and distant traffic. I leaned against the wall, closing my eyes for a second. And there it was again. That thought. The one I kept pushing away. You know what this is? I shook my head slightly, like I could physically push it out. No, I muttered under my breath. Because saying yes, even silently, felt like crossing a line I couldn't come back from. You okay? I opened my eyes. Grant. Of course. Because apparently, avoiding him didn't mean I'd stop running into him. He stood a few feet away, hands in his jacket pockets, looking at me with that same steady expression. What are you doing here? I asked, surprised. Meeting a friend, he said. You? Same. Another small pause. Not awkward. Just loaded. You don't look okay, he said. I let out a short laugh. I'm fine. He didn't respond. Didn't argue. Just waited. Again. Always with the waiting. Like he knew silence would get more out of me than pressure. I don't know what's wrong with me, I said finally. The words slipped out before I could stop them. Too honest. Too real. His expression didn't change. Something's not wrong with you, he said. You don't know that, I replied. I have a pretty good guess, he said quietly. My chest tightened. What does that mean? I asked. He held my gaze. And for a second, just a second, I thought he was going to say it. Say the thing I couldn't. But he didn't. Instead, he said, it means you're not the first person to feel like this. That confused me more than anything. Like what? I asked. He exhaled slowly, like he was choosing his words carefully. Like you're standing on the edge of something, he said. And you're scared to take a step because you think it'll change everything. My heart was pounding now. Because that was exactly it. Exactly. I don't like not knowing who I am, I admitted. You do know, he said. I shook my head immediately. No, I don't. He stepped a little closer. Not too close. Just enough. Lucas, he said, quieter now. What you're scared of isn't not knowing. I swallowed. Then what is it? I asked. He looked at me for a long moment. And then said, you're scared that once you admit it, you won't be able to pretend anymore. Silence. Heavy. Unavoidable. Because he was right. And I hated that he was right. I should go back inside, I said quickly. Too quickly. Running again. Yeah, he nodded. But this time, there was something different in his voice. Not distance. Not frustration. Just understanding. As I walked away, I felt it. That pressure building again. Stronger now. Closer to the surface. That night, I stood in front of the mirror again. Longer than before. And this time, I didn't look away. My reflection looked back at me. Tired. Conflicted. Honest in a way I wasn't used to. And slowly, quietly, I said it. Not loud. Barely even a whisper. I think I'm gay. The word hung in the air. Real. Irreversible. My chest tightened. But at the same time, something else happened. Something small, but undeniable. Relief. I closed my eyes, breathing out slowly. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't running. But I wasn't ready either. Not for what came next. Not for what it meant outside of that room. Not for what it meant with him. Because admitting it to myself, that was only the beginning. Saying it didn't fix everything. I think part of me expected that it would. That once I finally admitted it, even just to myself, something would click into place. That the confusion would settle. That I'd feel grounded, certain. I didn't. I just felt exposed. Like I'd opened a door inside myself that I couldn't close anymore. The next morning felt different. Not in any visible way. The same apartment. The same routine. The same version of me brushing my teeth and checking my phone like nothing had changed. But everything had. Because now there was a truth sitting quietly in the background of every thought. And I couldn't ignore it anymore. At work, I avoided Grant again. Not as obviously as before, but enough. Kept conversations short. Focused on tasks. Didn't linger. Because now, being around him wasn't just confusing. It was real. And I didn't know what to do with that. Around noon, my phone buzzed. Grant, you're doing it again. I stared at the message longer than I should have. My first instinct was to ignore it. Pretend I didn't see it. But I didn't. Me doing what? The reply came quickly. Grant, pulling away. I exhaled slowly, rubbing my face. He wasn't wrong. Again, I didn't respond. Not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't know how. What was I supposed to say? Hey, sorry, I've just been dealing with a full identity crisis, and you happen to be right in the center of it. Yeah, easy. 5 minutes later, another message. Grant, did I push too hard yesterday? That one hit differently. Because there was no accusation in it. Just concern. And that made the guilt worse. Me, no. You didn't do anything wrong. I hesitated, then added. Me. I just need time. The typing bubble appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Then. Grant, okay. That was it. No pressure. No follow-up questions. Just okay. And somehow, that made it harder. Because now the distance between us? That was on me. The rest of the day dragged. Every time I saw him across the office, I felt it. That pull. Stronger now. Clearer. No excuses left to hide behind. And every time, I forced myself to look away. That evening, I didn't go straight home. I walked. No destination. No plan. Just needed to move. To think. Or maybe to stop thinking. I ended up at a quiet park not far from my apartment. Sat on a bench, staring at nothing. And for the first time since I said it out loud, I let myself actually feel it. I'm gay. I said it again. Quieter this time. But steadier. The word didn't feel foreign anymore. Still heavy. But not wrong. And then came the next thought. The one I'd been avoiding even more. What does this mean for him? I leaned forward, elbows on my knees, hands pressed together like I was trying to hold something in place. Because this was harder. Admitting who I was one thing. Admitting what I felt, that was something else entirely. Because it wasn't abstract anymore. It had a face, a voice, a name, Grant. And the moment I let myself fully think it, really think it, my chest tightened. Because it wasn't just curiosity. It wasn't just confusion. I liked him. The realization hit quietly. No drama. No panic. Just a clear, undeniable understanding. And that should have felt good. Or exciting. Or something. Instead, it terrified me. Because now there were consequences. Real ones. What if I told him? What if I didn't? What if I misread everything? What if I ruined the only real connection I'd had in a long time? I laughed under my breath. Great timing, I muttered. Because of course this wouldn't be simple. My phone buzzed again. I glanced down. Grant. Of course. Grant, are you okay? I stared at the message. My thumb hovered over the screen. And for once, I didn't want to lie. Me, not really. Three dots appeared almost instantly. Grant, want company? My heart started pounding. Because this was a choice. Say yes, and everything might change. Say no, and I stay exactly where I am. Safe. Stuck. I closed my eyes for a second, then typed, Mia. I sent my location before I could overthink it. 10 minutes later, he was there. No hesitation. No questions. Just there. He walked over, hands in his jacket pockets, scanning until he found me. When our eyes met, something shifted again. Not like before. Not uncertain. Just aware. Hey, he said, sitting down beside me. Hey. Silence settled between us. But it wasn't uncomfortable. Just full. You want to talk about it? He asked after a moment. I stared ahead. Not sure where to start. That's okay, he said. Start anywhere. I let out a slow breath. This week's been a lot. Yeah, he nodded. I figured. Another pause. Then, I said it out loud, I admitted. He turned slightly toward me. Yeah. I nodded. Saying it here felt different. More real. More exposed. How'd it feel, he asked. I thought about it. Terrifying, I said honestly. Then, after a second. But also right. He didn't react dramatically. Didn't look surprised. Just nodded, like he'd been expecting that answer. That makes sense, he said. I glanced at him. You already knew, didn't you? He met my eyes. And for once, he didn't dodge it. I had a feeling, he admitted. I huffed a quiet laugh, shaking my head. Of course you did. Hey, he said lightly. You weren't exactly subtle. That's concerning. It's human, he corrected. That word stuck with me. Human. Not broken. Not wrong. Just human. I leaned back slightly, looking up at the sky. So now what? I asked. Now, he repeated. Yeah, I said. I know what it is now. I just don't know what to do with it. He was quiet for a second, thinking. You don't have to do anything right away, he said. You just let it be true. That sounded simple. Too simple. And what if it changes things? I asked. It probably will, he said. Honest. No sugarcoating. With you? I asked before I could stop myself. There it was. Out in the open. He didn't answer immediately. Didn't look away either. It doesn't have to, he said carefully. Carefully. That word hit me. But it could, I said. Yeah, he admitted. Silence again. Heavier this time. Because now we were standing right on the edge of something. And both of us knew it. I swallowed, my voice quieter now. Do you feel it too? The question hung there. Raw. Unfiltered. Impossible to take back. Grant exhaled slowly. And for the first time, he looked uncertain. Lucas, he said, I don't want to answer that in a way that pushes you somewhere you're not ready to go. My chest tightened. Just be honest. He studied my face, like he was making sure. And then he said, I care about you. Not a confession. Not a denial. Something in between. And somehow, that was harder than either option. Because now the door was open. But nothing had stepped through it yet. And I didn't know if I was ready to. But for the first time, I wasn't alone in it. And that changed everything. After that night, nothing officially changed. And somehow, everything did. We didn't suddenly become something. No labels. No dramatic shift. No moment where one of us said, this is what we are now. But there was an awareness between us that hadn't been there before. And once you feel that, you can't unfeel it. The next few days were strangely calm. Grant didn't push. Didn't bring up what I'd asked. Didn't try to define anything. He just stayed consistent. We talked. Worked. Sat together at lunch like we used to. But now, every small moment carried weight. Like the way our conversations lingered a little longer than necessary. Or how silence didn't feel empty anymore, it felt charged. I noticed everything. The way he looked at me when I wasn't paying attention. The slight pause before he said my name sometimes. The way he chose to stay present instead of stepping back. And the worst part? I wanted more. That realization hit me one evening when we were walking out of work together. It was nothing special. Just the usual end-of-day routine. You heading straight home? He asked. Yeah, I said. You? Same. We reached the point where we usually split off in different directions. And for a second, we both hesitated. It was small, barely noticeable, but it was there. All right, he said finally. See you tomorrow. Yeah, I replied. I walked away, and halfway down the street, I stopped. Because something felt wrong. Not wrong, just incomplete. I turned around. He was still there. Hadn't moved yet. Our eyes met again. And in that moment, I knew. I didn't want this to stay undefined. I didn't want to keep pretending like this was just normal. Because it wasn't. Not anymore. So I walked back. Heart racing. Overthinking every step. Hey, I said when I reached him again. He looked surprised. Hey, I swallowed. This, whatever this is. I gestured vaguely between us. I don't think I can just ignore it. He didn't respond right away. Just watched me. Carefully. Okay, he said slowly. That was it. No interruption. No redirection. Just okay. I took a breath. I don't know what I'm doing, I admitted. And I don't want to mess things up. But pretending nothing's happening is worse. Still nothing from him. But not in a bad way. He was listening. Really listening. I like you, I said. There it was. Out loud. No taking it back. My chest tightened immediately. Waiting. For rejection. For awkwardness. For everything to fall apart. But it didn't. Grant exhaled slowly. Not surprised. Not uncomfortable. Just thoughtful. I know, he said. That caught me off guard. You know? I repeated. A faint smile. Yeah. I let out a nervous laugh. And you didn't think that was something to mention? I was waiting for you to be ready to say it, he replied. That hit deeper than I expected. And now? I asked. Now came the part that mattered. The answer. The direction. He stepped a little closer. Not too close. Just enough that I felt it. Now, he said, we don't rush it. I frowned slightly. That's not really an answer. It is, he said. Just not the kind you want. I ran a hand through my hair, frustrated. I'm serious, Grant. So am I, he replied, calm but firm. Lucas, you just figured yourself out. You don't need to jump into something before you've even had time to stand still. That made sense. I hated that it made sense. So what? I said, we just stay like this? For now, he nodded. And if I don't want that? I asked quietly. That changed something in his expression. Subtle. But there. Then we talk about it, he said. I'm talking about it now. He held my gaze. Longer this time. More serious. I like you too, he said. My breath caught. But I'm not going to be the first person you figure this out through, he continued. That landed hard. What does that mean? I asked. It means I don't want to be something you hold on to because everything else feels uncertain, he said. You deserve to know yourself first. Without me influencing that. I stared at him. Part of me understood. Part of me was frustrated. You think I'm confused about you? I asked. No, he said. I think you're clear about me. Then what's the problem? The problem, he said gently, is that you're still figuring out you. Silence. Again. But this time, it wasn't just heavy. It was grounding. Because deep down, I knew he was right. I hate that you're being logical, I muttered. He smiled slightly. Yeah, I get that a lot. I exhaled, tension slowly leaving my shoulders. So what do? We don't avoid each other, he said. We don't pretend this didn't happen. And we give it time to become something real, he finished. Real. That word stayed with me. Because what I was feeling, it was real. But it was also new. Fragile. Unsteady. And maybe rushing it would break it. Okay, I said finally. He nodded. We stood there for another moment. Neither of us moving. Then, without thinking too much about it, I stepped forward and hugged him. It was quick. Simple. Nothing dramatic. But it meant something. He didn't pull away. Didn't hesitate. Just returned it. And in that moment, everything felt steady. Not solved. Not defined. But steady. When we pulled back, there was a small shift in the air. Lighter. Easier. See you tomorrow? He asked. Yeah, I said. And this time, when I walked away, it didn't feel incomplete. It felt like the beginning of something. Not rushed. Not forced. Just real. Giving it time sounded simple. In reality, it was anything but. Because once you admit something like that, once you say I like you, and hear I like you too back, there's no going back to neutral. Even if you try. The next week felt like walking a tightrope. Nothing between us was hidden anymore. But nothing was fully acted on either. And that space in between, it was intense. We still worked together. Still had lunch. Still talked the same way. But now, every interaction carried this quiet undercurrent. Like the way our hands would almost brush when reaching for the same thing. And both of us would notice. But neither of us would react. Or how conversations would dip into something deeper, then pull back just before crossing a line. It wasn't awkward. It was controlled. Too controlled. And I was starting to feel it. That pressure building again. Not confusion this time. Not fear. Just frustration. Because I knew what I felt. I wasn't questioning that anymore. The problem was, I didn't know what I was allowed to do with it. One evening, about a week after that conversation, we ended up back at that same park. Not planned. Just happened. You come here a lot now, Grant said, sitting down beside me. Only when I need to think, I replied. He glanced at me. That often, huh? I huffed a quiet laugh. Lately? Yeah. There was a pause. Then, what are you thinking about right now? He asked. I didn't hesitate this time. You. He blinked, slightly caught off guard. Then smiled, just a little. Honest, he said. You said not to pretend. I shrugged. Fair. Silence again. But this time, it didn't feel restrained. It felt close. I'm trying to do this right, I said after a moment. He looked at me. You are. It doesn't feel like it, I admitted. It feels like I'm just holding back all the time. He leaned back slightly, considering that. From what? He asked. I turned to him. You really don't know? I want to hear you say it, he replied. That was becoming a pattern. He never filled in the blanks for me. He made me step into them myself. I want to be closer to you, I said. There it was. Clear. Simple. His expression didn't change much. But I saw it. That shift. That awareness. I know, he said quietly. And I pushed. And I want that too, he admitted. My chest tightened. But, I asked. There was always a but. He exhaled slowly. But I don't want you to skip steps. I frowned. What steps? The part where you actually get comfortable with who you are, he said. Not just in your head. In real life. I am comfortable, I said, maybe a little too quickly. He raised an eyebrow slightly. Are you? That stopped me. Because, no, not fully. I hadn't told anyone. Hadn't said it out loud to anyone except myself. Hadn't lived it. I'd only acknowledged it. And that wasn't the same thing. I just don't think I need a whole journey before I can feel something, I said. You don't, he agreed. But you do need to be sure you're not holding on to me, because I'm the first place that feeling landed. That hit harder than I expected. You think that's what this is? I asked. No, he said immediately. I think what you feel is real. Then why does it matter? Because I don't want to be your only reference point, he said. That's not fair to you. I looked away, frustrated again. You're making this harder than it needs to be, I muttered. Or I'm trying to make it last longer than something rushed would, he replied calmly. That shut me up. Because deep down, I knew he wasn't rejecting me. He was protecting something. And maybe, protecting me too. I hate that you're right, I said after a while. He smiled faintly. You said that already. Still applies. We both laughed softly. The tension eased a little, but not completely. Because the truth was, I didn't just want something real. I wanted something now. And that difference? It was starting to matter. Can I ask you something? I said. Always. I hesitated for just a second. Then, have you done this before? He looked at me, understanding immediately what I meant. Yeah, he said simply. That shouldn't have affected me. But it did. Not in a bad way. Just awareness. You, he asked. I shook my head. No. Another pause. That's part of why I'm being careful, he said. I figured, I replied. There was no judgment in his voice. No pressure. Just honesty. And somehow, that made everything feel even more real. Because this wasn't just something in my head anymore. It was something I was stepping into. For the first time. With him. And that made every decision feel heavier. I don't want to mess this up, I said quietly. You won't, he replied. You don't know that. He looked at me, steady. I do. I held his gaze. Longer this time. And for a moment, I almost closed the distance. Almost. But I didn't. Not because I didn't want to, but because I finally understood what he meant. This wasn't something to rush, even if every part of me wanted to. So instead, I stayed where I was. Close, but not crossing that line yet. And for the first time, that didn't feel like losing something. It felt like choosing to build it the right way, even if it was harder, even if it took time. Because whatever this was becoming, I didn't want it to be temporary. And neither did he. Something shifted after that night in the park. Not in a dramatic way, but in the kind of quiet, steady way that you only notice when you stop fighting it. I stopped resisting myself. That didn't mean everything suddenly became easy. It just meant I wasn't arguing with my own thoughts anymore. I'm gay. The words didn't feel foreign now. They didn't sit in my chest like something dangerous. They just existed. And once I stopped fighting that, everything else started to fall into place. Slowly. The biggest difference? I stopped hiding from the idea of being seen. Not by everyone. I wasn't there yet. But by him. Because up until now, even after admitting everything, there was still a part of me holding back. A part that kept saying, don't go too far. Don't make it real. But it was already real. And pretending otherwise was exhausting. A few days later, we were at his place. That was new. Up until now, everything had been neutral work, outside, shared spaces. But this felt different. Not because anything happened, but because of what it meant. Grant's apartment was simple, clean, minimal, calm. It felt like him. "You want something to drink?" he asked. "Water's fine," I said, trying to sound normal. I wasn't. My heart had been beating faster since I stepped inside. Not from fear, just awareness. This wasn't just conversation anymore. This was stepping into his space, letting him step into mine. He handed me a glass, then leaned against the counter, watching me for a second. "You're overthinking," he said. I exhaled. "That obvious?" "Only to me," he replied. "Great." A small smile. Then silence. But not the kind we'd had before. This one felt closer. "You don't have to be careful with me all the time," he said after a moment. I looked at him. "I'm not trying to be." "You are," he said. "I can see it." He wasn't wrong. Because even now, even after everything, there was still that voice in my head, telling me to slow down, to not mess this up, to not be too much. "I just don't want to do the wrong thing," I admitted. He pushed off the counter, stepping a little closer. "What's the wrong thing?" he asked. "I don't know," I said honestly. "That's the problem." He stopped in front of me. Close. Not too close, but enough that I felt it. "Lucas," he said quietly, "this isn't a test." I swallowed. "You're not going to fail by feeling something," he continued. That landed. Deep. Because that's exactly how it felt. Like one wrong move, and everything would collapse. "I'm not used to this," I said. "I know. And I don't know what I'm supposed to do." "You're not supposed to do anything," he said. "You just respond to what's real." I looked at him. Really looked. "And what if what's real is too much?" I asked. A small pause. "Then we figure it out," he said. Simple. Grounded. And suddenly, I wasn't as scared. There was a moment. A quiet one. Where neither of us spoke. And this time, I didn't hold back. I stepped closer. Not dramatic. Not rushed. Just intentional. His eyes flicked to mine. Not surprised. Just aware. And then, I hugged him. It was different from the last time. Longer. Less uncertain. He didn't hesitate. His arms came around me just as naturally. And something inside me settled. Not excitement. Not nerves. Something steadier. Like I'd finally stopped bracing for impact. We stayed like that for a few seconds. Maybe longer. I didn't count. When we pulled back, neither of us moved far. "That's what I mean," he said quietly. "What?" "That wasn't wrong," he replied. I let out a small breath. "Yeah." And for once, I believed it. We ended up sitting on the couch after that, talking. About normal things. About nothing. But even that felt different now. Because there was no wall anymore. No pretending. No avoiding. At some point, the conversation slowed. "You seem lighter," he said. I thought about it. "I think I am," I admitted. "Why?" "Because I'm not fighting myself anymore." He nodded. Like that made perfect sense. "It shows," he said. I leaned back slightly, looking at him. "Can I ask you something?" I said. "Yeah." "Why are you so patient with me?" He smiled faintly. "Because I remember what it felt like," he said. That caught my attention. "You went through this too?" I asked. "Not exactly the same," he replied. "But close enough." I nodded slowly. "And?" I asked. "Did you figure it out?" He looked at me. Steady. "Yeah," he said. I stopped being afraid of what it meant. I let that sink in. Because that was the last piece, wasn't it? Not just knowing. Not just accepting. But not being afraid. "I'm getting there," I said. "I know," he replied. And for the first time, I felt like I actually was. Not fully. Not completely. But enough. Enough to stop running. Enough to stop hiding. Enough to finally move forward. And maybe, just maybe, enough to let something real happen. It didn't happen all at once. There was no single moment where I woke up and thought, "That's it. I'm completely okay now." It was smaller than that. Quieter. But real. The biggest change? I stopped feeling like I was hiding even when I wasn't telling anyone. That might sound strange. Because technically, nothing about my life had changed on the outside. My friends didn't know. My routine was the same. Work was the same. But inside, everything felt different. Because for the first time, I wasn't lying to myself. And that alone made the world feel lighter. Grant noticed it before I said anything. Of course he did. We were walking back from lunch one day when he said, "You're not looking over your shoulder anymore." I frowned slightly. "What does that mean?" "You used to hesitate," he said. "Like you were checking if it was okay to just exist the way you are." That hit deeper than I expected. "And now?" I asked. "Now you don't," he said simply. I thought about it for a second. He was right. I wasn't second-guessing every thought. I wasn't shutting things down before they had a chance to form. I was just being. I guess I got tired of fighting myself, I said. He nodded. That usually happens. Eventually, I added. We shared a small smile. And in that moment, everything felt easy. Not because everything was solved, but because I wasn't carrying that weight anymore. Later that week, something else happened. Something small. But it mattered. I told someone. Not a big announcement. Not a dramatic confession. Just one person. My friend Alex. We were sitting in his apartment, half watching something on TV, when he said, "You've been different lately." I froze for a second. Old instinct. Different how? I asked. Better, he said. But also like you're hiding something. I let out a quiet breath. There it was. The moment. I could deflect. Joke it off. Change the subject. Or, I could stop hiding. I think I know what it is, I said slowly. He muted the TV. Turned toward me. Okay, he said. What is it? My heart started racing. Even now. Even after everything. It wasn't easy. I think I'm gay, I said. Silence. For a split second, my brain went into overdrive. Watching his reaction. Waiting for something to change. But it didn't. He just nodded. Okay, he said. That was it. I blinked. That's it. He shrugged slightly. Yeah, that's it. I let out a nervous laugh. You're not surprised? He smirked. Lucas, you've been having an internal crisis for like 2 weeks. I figured it was something real. I shook my head. That obvious, huh? To me? Yeah. There was no judgment. No weirdness. No distance. Just acceptance. And suddenly, something inside me relaxed completely. Thanks, I said quietly. For what? For not making it a big deal. He shrugged again. It's only a big deal if you make it one. That stuck with me. Because that's what I'd been doing, wasn't it? Making it bigger. Heavier. Scarier. When in reality, it was just me. That night, I texted Grant. Me. I told someone. He replied almost immediately. Grant, yeah? Me, yeah? Pause. Then, Grant, how'd it feel? I smiled slightly. Me. Not as terrifying as I thought. A few seconds. Grant, I'm proud of you. That did something to me. Not overwhelming. Not dramatic. Just warm. Me, thanks. Another pause. Then, Grant, you want to come over? My heart picked up slightly. But this time, it wasn't nerves. It was something else. Something steadier. Me, yeah? When I got there, everything felt different again. Not uncertain. Not heavy. Just real. He opened the door, stepped aside to let me in. Same as last time. Same space. But I wasn't the same. You look good, he said. I laughed. That's new. I mean it, he replied. I knew he wasn't just talking about how I looked. I told Alex, I said. I figured, he nodded. You look like someone who stopped carrying something. Yeah, I said. I think I did. There was a moment. And this time, I didn't hesitate. I stepped closer. Not overthinking it. Not questioning it. Just doing what felt right. You were right, I said quietly. About what? About not rushing, I replied. About figuring myself out first. He watched me carefully. And he asked. And I'm not scared anymore. That was the truth. Not completely fearless. But not controlled by it anymore. And that made all the difference. He stepped closer too, closing the distance. And this time, when we hugged, it felt different. Not like a question. Not like a maybe. Like something that had finally found its place. We pulled back slightly. Still close. You sure? He asked quietly. I nodded. Yeah, I said. No hesitation. No doubt. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was stepping into something unknown. I felt like I was finally standing in something true. That night didn't feel like a turning point. Not in the dramatic way people imagine. No sudden rush. No overwhelming moment where everything changed at once. It felt steady. And somehow, that meant more. We didn't talk much at first. Not because we didn't have anything to say, but because for the first time, words weren't carrying the weight. We were. I sat down on the couch, and he joined me a second later. Close. Not carefully close. Just naturally. You seem different, he said after a while. I feel different, I replied. How? I thought about it. Like I'm not waiting for something to go wrong, I said. He nodded slowly. That's a good place to be, he said. Yeah, I agreed. It is. There was a quiet pause. Then, I kept thinking this would be harder, I admitted. What part, he asked. All of it, I said. Figuring it out. Saying it out loud. Letting it be real. And it was hard, I said. Just not in the way I expected. He watched me closely. I thought the hardest part would be what people think, I continued. But it wasn't. I shook my head. It was me, I said. Fighting myself. That was the worst part. He didn't interrupt. Didn't try to add anything. Just listened. I spent so much time trying to stay the same. I went on. Trying to fit into something that didn't actually fit. And now, he asked quietly. Now I don't feel like I have to, I said. The words felt solid. Real. And for the first time, I believed them completely. He leaned back slightly, studying me. I'm glad you got here, he said. Me too. Another pause. Then he asked, what about us? There it was. Not a question we'd avoided. Just one we hadn't fully answered yet. I looked at him. And this time, I didn't overthink it. I want this, I said. Simple. Clear. He held my gaze. Yeah, he asked. Yeah, I nodded. Not because it's new. Not because you're the first person I felt this with. I paused. But because it's real, I finished. Something shifted in his expression. Not surprise. Not hesitation. Recognition. Okay, he said. That word again. Simple. But this time, it meant something different. It wasn't let's wait. It wasn't not yet. It was yes. We didn't rush after that. Didn't suddenly change everything overnight. We just let it happen. More time together. More honesty. Less hesitation. The first time we kissed, it wasn't planned. No build-up. No big moment. We were mid-conversation. Something small. Something unimportant. And then there was a pause. The kind that says more than words ever could. He looked at me. I looked at him. And this time, neither of us stepped back. We kissed. Simple. Real. No overthinking. And when it ended, I didn't feel confused. I didn't feel scared. I just felt right. A few weeks later, things felt normal again. But a different kind of normal. We still worked together. Still had our routines. Still joked about stupid things and complained about meetings. But now, there was no space between what I felt and what I allowed myself to show. No hiding. No second guessing. Just being. One evening, we were walking through the city, nothing special, just talking about random things, when I caught our reflection in a store window. Both of us side by side. Relaxed. Present. And for a second, I saw it clearly. Not the confusion. Not the struggle. The result. Everything I'd fought through. Everything I'd avoided. Everything I'd finally faced. It led here. To something simple. Something real. You okay? Grant asked, noticing I'd gone quiet. I smiled slightly. Yeah, I said. I just finally feel like myself. He nodded. Good, he said. And that was it. No dramatic ending. No perfect resolution. Just a quiet understanding. That the hardest part was never about the world. It was about being honest with myself. And once I did, everything else followed. I didn't lose who I was. I found him. And for the first time, that was enough.